So, the latest data and information is out on UK salaries and earnings in the workplace. And while a lot of the focus, understandably, is on the rate of income growth versus inflation and the unemployment figures,
you're all fired.
Today I want to look at this from a different perspective, of how much are people earning, both in real and nominal terms, and how we all compare to everyone else around us, geographically, age, all of that. I know, it doesn't matter. You're only racing yourself. What actually matters is, what you save, and comparison is the thief of joy. I fully believe all of that, but, you still clicked on the video, didn't you? Which means that you're like me. And even though it's not size that matters, it's what you do with it that counts, every so often you can't resist taking a peek left and right at the economic urinal to see what everyone else is packing. Let's not dwell on what I just admitted to there, shall we? And just crack on with it. So the report we're going to look at today is this one, Earnings and Employment from Pay-As-You-Earn Real-Time Information UK September 2023. This is actually a collaboration paper between the ONS and HMRC that looks at, as the title suggests, pay-as-you-earn income. So employed individuals in a career or job who get a paycheck from an employer, not income from assets or wealth or from the self-employed. Let's just start off first of all looking at high-level median earnings of individuals before tax. So if you take the 30.1 million people that are said to be at work here in the UK and you line them up by how much they earn before tax, what does the person right in the middle earn?
Well, the median?
Estimates for August 2023 indicate that the median monthly pay was £2,260, which is an increase of 6.7% compared with the same period of the previous year. £2,260 a month makes the average UK income £27,120 a year before tax. But if we look at the extremes, 10% of payrolled employees earn equal or less to £751 per month, and 90% of payrolled employees earn equal or less than £5,410 per month. And then 99% of employees earn less than £15,104 per month. So that means an income of £181,248 a year puts you in the top 1% of highest paid employees in the UK. Around 300,000 people will be in that bracket then, and £64,920 a year will get you in the top 10%, where about 3 million people live. Remember, this is PAYE staff, so full-time employed. You might be in the top 1% of highest earning staff in the UK. That doesn't mean you're in the top 1% of earners.
Because you're a povo.
So let's look at this now in more detail, starting with sector-based earnings. On screen are the median incomes by sector. The thin blue line here is the overall median number. We discussed this before. This is the £2,260 a month. In a familiar story, finance and tech lead the way in terms of earnings, with the median income in finance being significantly higher than the median of the UK. Finance jobs continue to provide the best opportunity for higher pay in the UK, but is this changing? If we look at this chart, which plots growth in income based on sector, we can see that actually some of the lower paid sectors have seen the biggest percentage point pay rises in the last 12 months. And 3 of the highest paid sectors to work in saw the lowest levels of growth. That might surprise some people and lead them to believe that other sectors are finally starting to catch up. But if we go back to the same report from this time last year, we can see that finance, construction and IT all had pay rises above the median value. Significantly so in some cases. There's probably a whole host of reasons as to why we're seeing jumps in traditionally lower paid sectors versus others. I mean, public sector pay rises is going to be one of them. But it really seems that higher paid sectors were quicker to dish out above average pay rises, and then other sectors have only just really caught up in this last year. But the one thing that is clear now is there's been pay rises across all sectors of the economy. The pay rises we're seeing are actually the fastest over the measured time period, which started in 2001. And now pay is growing above the rate of inflation for the first time in a long while. The BBC reporting on this headlined it as "Pay matches price rises even as unemployment climbs." They're speaking about this here, where the growth in average wages nationally is now the same or slightly above the rate of inflation. I don't think it's the BBC's intention this, but that headline could be misconstrued as people's incomes have now caught up with inflation. But as this chart that the BBC made shows, that's far from the case. Remember, this chart looks at rate of growth, so even if these lines are falling, things are still going up, it's just at a slower rate. Wage growth would need to be higher than the rate of inflation for a while to bring real incomes back up, and for people to have the same spending power as they did, say, 2 years ago. If we look at this produced by the ONS in August, we can see total and regular pay in real terms, and how over this time period, which is the same one the BBC was looking at, real incomes have been in sharp decline due to this huge rise in inflation. Anytime the dark blue and light blue lines are below this red one here, your income in real terms or your living standards are going backwards. Since 2008, real incomes have really been battered. 15 years of stagnation means that according to analysis by the Trade Union Congress, the average person in the UK has been paid 2.7% less in real terms today than they would have earned in 2008. They also report that wage growth across the OECD as a whole had risen 8.8% on average over the same time period. It's this thing of, yes, on paper you might be earning more money than you did 15 years ago, but things still feel harder all the same. I mean, they were already hard, but the recent inflation has just compounded that problem. So this news of the rate of pay growth matching price rises has not undone this. But what it does mean is that the average person's real income, so their income adjusted for inflation, is no longer going backwards. Again, much will be said about the rise in wages and the fact that this will lead to a price-wage spiral, or that we're already in one, and that further wage rises will only drive more inflation. The inflation figures come out, I think it's the 20th of September? Yep. We'll look at it in a bit more detail by seeing what the core service numbers have done. So let's just save that chat for then. But one chat I do want to have today that I don't think gets enough attention at the minute when people discuss the impacts of wage growth is fiscal drag. The current government has kept tax bands at these rates. And as inflation has risen and people have asked for more money just to keep up, by holding the bands at these levels, they've essentially dragged more people into higher tax bands than they would have been in. And this happens at every end of the scale. You might get an inflation-linked pay rise, but then that bit of your income enters a higher tax band, so is taxed at a higher rate. For this reason, fiscal drag is a stealth tax, a way of taxing people more without raising taxes. You just hold the tax bands where they are and let inflation do the rest for you. It might seem like, this is a rare case. How many people could actually be sat near the band and a pay rise pushes them over? And I guess another argument is, well, you only pay tax on a gain, so, boo-hoo. But this impacts millions of people. The latest data from HMRC kind of shows us this. There are 5.6 million higher rate taxpayers, so the 40% band, and this is up 40% from 2020-2021. And the additional rate taxpayers, these are the people who pay 45%. The amount of people in that band has gone up 55% to 862,000 people in a year. So that means in a workforce of about 30 million people, 6.4 million people sit in higher tax bands, and around 50% of those have entered them in the last 2 years, meaning 10% of the UK workforce has been impacted by fiscal drag, affecting how much they actually take home. That doesn't even account for lower earners who will have been pushed into the 20% band, whereas before they weren't paying any tax on their income. The longer these freezes last, the more people will be affected by this. And in November 2022, Hunt extended the freeze from 2026 to 2028. I'm sorry, that was a slight segue away from the main topic of discussion for this video, wasn't it? But I just think that's something that's often overlooked. I can imagine there's many of you sat at home that have had a 10% pay rise and then seen 40% of it gobbled up by the taxman, and are just wondering how, after a significant pay rise, you can still feel poorer than you were 2 years ago. Right, let's just bring this back now to median earnings, but let's look at ages instead. So similar chart again, with the blue line being the median average income. Median pay for under 18s was £401 a month. 18 to 24 was around 1,600, 25 to 34, 2,450. The highest median earners are the 35 to 49 category at 2,600, and then 50 to 64 sit just above the overall median with 2,300. The over 65s, their median income was 1,300. Okay, so national averages and medians based on age are all interesting enough, but they fail to take into consideration regional differences. It'll come as no surprise that the UK is very London or South East focused, but the variance in median incomes across the UK is still pretty wild. Median pay in London as a whole is around £2,732, which is significantly above the national average. Enfield has the lowest at £2,257, and Wandsworth has the highest, a pretty huge £3,545. Remember, this is a median figure as well, so 50% of people in Wandsworth earn more than that. The lowest median income in the UK, according to this, can be found in Leicester at £1,927. I won't go through all of this, but I've linked the data below, and you can have a play around and see how where you live compares to the rest of the country. So what do you do with all this information? I mean, statistically speaking, 50% of you will be feeling pretty smug right now, and the other 50% will be feeling pretty crap about yourselves. But don't worry, because 100% of people from Leicester won't be happy at the minute. That which is measured improves. That which is measured and reported improves exponentially. I'm reporting this information to you in the hopes that it arms you with data that you can then use to improve your own income. I mean, I can't promise exponential increases, but clearly the sector you're in is important. You don't need to be a finance whiz to benefit from this information either. Maybe you can apply your skill set to another industry, work in HR for a finance company and not a theatre business. Location is obviously even more relevant. The difference between the highest median income area in the UK and the lowest is only 100 miles. Cost of living also needs to be taken into consideration, of course, but it's still an interesting point, isn't it? Could you move 50 miles in a certain direction and completely change your earning potential? If you're feeling a bit despondent at the end of this video because of the figures I've laid out, behind in life or poor compared to everyone else, let's fix that, shall we, by watching this video next, where I'll show you that you're probably actually richer than you think you are.